Hey everybody, Sergeant Tony here. I just got in from doing a little cardio and I'm pretty sure it was 1,000 degrees outside with 900% humidity. It was really not a fun experience. But while I was on my little cardio jaunt, I was reminded of something that might be of some benefit to you. And that's the question about exercise. When is exercise too much? Can you exercise too much? Well, obviously, if I'm making a video about this particular subject, it must obviously have a different answer than, oh no, you can't exercise too much. Well, of course not. Yes, you can, and I've talked about this a little bit before, but I was reminded today of a couple of things that I probably didn't include in previous discussions about too much exercise. So there are two ways that you can know if you're exercising too much. The first way to know is if you have an elevated heart rate in the morning. When you get up in the morning, if your heart rate is elevated. Now sometimes you know this almost instinctively without having to measure it or to check it. You already feel like that your heart is beating faster. And in that particular case, you probably are overtraining. In some cases, you'll just have to check. Now, obviously, if you're going to be checking your morning heart rate, to see if it's elevated, you will have to have something to compare it to, a baseline. So it's not a bad idea, especially as you're getting into a new exercise program, to find out what your base heart rate is. So prior to starting an exercise program, you might want to get up in the morning, give yourself a few minutes to wake up, and then take your resting heart rate then. Most of the times, myself included, I can't take my resting heart rate laying in bed before I get up. I've tried, it just doesn't work for me. Maybe it works for you. But if you're more like me, then give yourself a chance to get up, wake up before you've had any kind of coffee or caffeine that would automatically start to increase your heart rate. Just wait on that, take your resting heart rate, do that for a week or two, and then you'll have some sort of a baseline. You'll know what your average resting heart rate is when you get up in the morning. If you suspect that you might be overtraining and you're checking your resting heart rate in the morning, that resting heart rate is going to be elevated because the overtraining has caused you to be overtired. And so that's going to be an indication that you're overtraining. More likely though, you'll know that that exercise has been too much when you find yourself injured. Now here's the problem. Trying to distinguish between regular muscle soreness, which we all have, or an injury. And this is still one of those things for me, and I've been doing this for a very long time, but even I have to try and figure out, okay, is this what I'm feeling right now? Is this a result of just regular muscle soreness, just a regular kind of thing that happens when you exercise, or is this the beginning of an injury that I really need to take care of right now? A friend of mine, and this is what kind of gave rise to this need for this video today, a friend of mine had decided that she was going to start exercising, take better care of herself, and so her chosen form of exercise was walking. Great idea, great idea. It's low impact. It doesn't require any kind of really specialized footwear, but I'd suggest to get some good footwear for it. Running shoes work for walking as well. And so she, like most of us, when you finally decide that you're going to start doing something, a little bit gradually was not going to work for her. And it really doesn't work well for many of us. We want to get right to it. So we go to the store and we buy all of the equipment and all the clothes and all the other stuff, and we can't wait to get started. And then we do too much, too fast, too soon, too often, too many twos. And so what she did is she went from doing nothing to walking, and I'm not sure how far she was walking every time she went out for a walk, but she was walking at a brisk pace in the morning and in the evening every day. After 2 weeks of doing that, she's now wearing a boot because at about a week and a half into this, she started to feel something that wasn't right, but she maybe didn't understand that this was the beginning of an overuse injury. Maybe she thought it was just regular muscle soreness associated with exercise, and that was the problem. So she went on ahead and tried to push through, and then that's when she became injured to the point that she's now wearing a boot. what you have to do is you have to gradually build up to things. So instead of walking twice a day, every day, she should have walked once a day for 3 times a week. Maybe walk once a day on Monday, once on Wednesday, once on Friday, and maybe once over the weekend. And then again the next week, maybe build up slightly. The best rule of thumb really for an increase in mileage or time as it pertains to running and walking is that you don't add more than 10%. 10% is sort of the rule of thumb. Don't add more than 10% this week over what you did last week. So if I add 50% more this week over what I did last week, I'm inviting trouble. So this is what you want to do. You want to gradually build up to it. It's counter to what we're wanting to do. We're excited, we want to get started, but we also need to be smart. And so instead of her consulting with me and asking me, Tony, what would you suggest I do? I would have told her what I just said. Instead, she was just excited and went out and did too much, and now she's wearing a boot. So here's the thing. Curb your enthusiasm. Curb your enthusiasm with a little bit of wisdom, actually a lot of wisdom, and allow your body time to acclimate to the new activity. You can't expect it to go from doing nothing to doing a whole lot in a very short amount of time and be able to successfully adapt to that without there being some injury. Okay, those two things, elevated heart rate, soreness that really is more pain associated with an injury. If you feel like that there's something coming on, some kind of a pain, you're not real sure about it, give yourself a rest. Give yourself a rest. Give yourself a day. Give yourself 2 days. Nothing wrong with doing that. Better to do that than to be wearing a boot later on. Okay, we'll see you next time.